Behind every shattered code, every silent flight, and every whispered secret lies a darkness the world tried to bury. These are the untold stories from the shadowed corners of World War II, where courage wrestled with fear, and the line between hero and monster blurred. Step carefully. What you are about to uncover was meant to stay hidden, locked away in the shadows of history. Are you ready to open the box that no one dared touch? In the quiet English countryside, just miles from the bustling epicenter of Bletchley Park, lived Eleanor Stanton, a young woman whose keen mind and unyielding resolve would place her at the heart of one of the most secret and crucial operations of World War II. Eleanor was no ordinary codebreaker. Her life was entwined with the war in ways both public and deeply personal. Her father had been a renowned cryptographer in the First World War, and her brother, Thomas, was missing somewhere on the unforgiving Eastern Front. But it was her work inside the walls of Bletchley Park that would mark her name in the shadows of history. Eleanor's journey began in the early days of the war when Britain was still reeling from the Blitz and desperate to find an edge against the Axis powers. Bletchley Park was a fortress of intelligence, where mathematicians, linguists, and puzzle solvers labored day and night to unlock the secrets hidden within the encrypted messages of Nazi Germany. It was here that the Enigma machine, a device the Nazis believed unbreakable, became the puzzle Eleanor and her colleagues sought to solve. Her role was unlike that of the famed Alan Turing or the men who built the bomb machines. Eleanor specialized in linguistic nuance, understanding the subtle patterns of German communications that might slip past machine analysis. Her gift was intuition, a capacity to sense when a message was more than just coded letters but a story waiting to be unraveled. Each decrypted message was a glimpse into the Nazi war machine's strategy, troop movements, supply routes, even the timing of attacks. It was a bitter irony that while she decoded the enemy's plans, Eleanor was haunted by the absence of news about her brother Thomas. Thomas had been a young officer in the British Expeditionary Force, captured during the fierce fighting near Moscow in the early stages of Operation Barbarossa. Letters had stopped coming, and no prisoner lists included his name. Eleanor clung to hope, pouring her grief into her work. The months passed with relentless intensity. Every night the glow of lamps illuminated the desks of the codebreakers, the tapping of typewriters and the soft murmur of conversation blending into a soundtrack of determination. Eleanor worked closely with a Soviet liaison officer, Captain Ivan Petrov, whose presence was a reminder of the uneasy alliance between Britain and the Soviet Union. Together, they cross-referenced intercepted German communications with battlefield reports from the Eastern Front, slowly piecing together the evolving narrative of the war. One message, intercepted in late 1942, revealed a planned German offensive aimed at encircling Soviet forces near Stalingrad. Eleanor's intuition told her the message contained more than just coordinates and times. It hinted at the desperation of the German command, a desperation that could be exploited. She urged her superiors to prioritize the information, and soon British intelligence relayed it to Soviet commanders. The Battle of Stalingrad would become a turning point in the war, and Eleanor's contribution, though hidden, was pivotal. As the war dragged on, the strain on Eleanor grew. The secrecy required that she could not share her burden with friends or family, and the fear for her brother's fate gnawed at her constantly. Yet, she found solace in the small community at Bletchley Park, women and men united in a common cause, aware that their work could save countless lives. Eleanor's story was not just one of cryptography but of courage and sacrifice. In early 1944, just weeks before the D-Day invasion, she was assigned to a critical new project: decoding the Enigma messages sent by German forces in Normandy. These messages were laced with false information, designed to confuse the Allies about the true location of the invasion. Eleanor's skill in detecting linguistic patterns helped the team to filter truth from deception. On June 6, as Allied forces stormed the beaches of Normandy, Eleanor sat at her desk, listening to reports as encrypted messages continued to flood in. Her heart raced with every intercepted signal that confirmed the success of the landings. It was a moment when her work transcended numbers and codes. It was a moment when the tides of war shifted. The war ended in 1945 with the fall of Berlin and the surrender of Nazi Germany, but Eleanor's battle was far from over. She was part of the team that helped interpret intercepted communications that led to the discovery of secret weapons programs, including the V-2 rocket. Her insights were vital in the post-war trials that sought justice for war crimes and in laying the groundwork for the United Nations. Yet, the most profound moment came when she received a letter from a Soviet official informing her that Thomas had been liberated from a POW camp. He was weak but alive, a testament to endurance and hope amidst the darkest shadows of war. The reunion was bittersweet. Thomas carried scars both visible and invisible, but the bond between siblings, forged in letters and silent prayers, remained unbroken. Eleanor Stanton's story is one of those hidden chapters of World War II, where the battle was fought not on muddy fields or across bombed-out cities but in rooms full of machines, mines, and whispered secrets. It was a world where every decoded message could change the fate of millions, and where a daughter's love propelled her to unravel the enemy's code, bringing light to a world consumed by darkness. Her legacy, like that of many unsung heroes of Bletchley Park, remained classified for decades. It was only years later that historians uncovered the vital role of codebreakers and cryptanalysts in ending the war. Eleanor's name might not appear on monuments or history books, but in the quiet hum of every intercepted message, her spirit endures, a reminder that sometimes the greatest battles are fought in silence, and the whispers of a codebreaker can echo through history forever. The Aleutian Islands stretch like a jagged chain across the foggy edge of the North Pacific, a remote and rugged outpost of American territory during World War II. Among these islands was Kiska, a place of wind-whipped cliffs, dense forests, and bitter cold that tested the endurance of even the hardiest soldiers. It was here, in the harsh winter of 1943, that a fierce and little-known battle unfolded, a last stand that would reveal the resilience of men and the courage of a forgotten people. Captain Jack Harris was a young officer in the U.S. Marines, sent with his battalion to retake Kiska from the Imperial Japanese forces who had occupied it since mid-1942. The Aleutians campaign was often overshadowed by larger battles in Europe and the Pacific, but to those who fought there, it was no less brutal. The island's constant fog, treacherous terrain, and sudden storms made every step a challenge, and the Japanese defenders had turned the landscape into a maze of hidden bunkers, minefields, and sniper nests. Jack had grown up in Oregon, near the coast, and his love for the sea and wild landscapes gave him a unique perspective on the campaign. But nothing had prepared him for the eerie quiet that surrounded the landing on Kiska. When American and Canadian forces landed in August 1943, they were stunned to find the island seemingly deserted. Months earlier, the Japanese had secretly evacuated under the cover of darkness, slipping away without a single Allied soldier noticing. Yet the battle was far from over. Booby traps, hidden mines, and the unforgiving environment became the enemy. Jack's unit moved cautiously through the dense forests, always alert for ambushes. The constant fog muffled sounds and blurred shapes, turning every movement into a gamble. The soldiers fought not only the terrain but also frostbite, exhaustion, and the psychological strain of an invisible enemy. Intertwined with the soldiers' stories were those of the Aleutian natives, the Anangan people, who had lived on these islands for centuries. Many had been forcibly evacuated by both Japanese and American forces, their villages abandoned or destroyed. Jack formed a fragile bond with Anna, a young Anangan woman who had returned to Kiska to care for the land and buried memories. Through her eyes, the documentary captures the deep connection between people and place, a connection strained but never broken by the tides of war. Anna's knowledge of the island's hidden paths and wildlife proved invaluable to Jack's battalion. Together, they navigated treacherous cliffs and avoided deadly traps. Her stories of survival during the Japanese occupation revealed the quiet heroism of civilians caught between two warring empires. The Aleutians were not just a battlefield, but a home scarred by war. Despite the absence of Japanese soldiers, the American forces paid a heavy toll. Dozens of men fell victim to accidents, friendly fire incidents, and the brutal elements. One chilling episode recounts a sudden blizzard that trapped Jack's unit for days, forcing them to ration supplies and huddle together for warmth, their radios silent in the howling storm. Letters home described the mixture of fear and determination, the hope that they would see spring again. The documentary uses these personal accounts to reveal a side of World War II rarely told, the war against nature itself. The Aleutian campaign tested the limits of human endurance and highlighted the strategic importance of even the most remote locations. Control of the islands prevented Japanese forces from threatening the Alaskan mainland and secured vital supply routes to the Soviet Union. As winter thawed into spring, the battle for Kiska officially ended, but its legacy endured. Jack and Anna's story became a symbol of cooperation across cultures and a testament to the forgotten battles fought in silence. The island slowly healed, though scars remained in the landscape and in the memories of those who lived through the war. The last stand at Kiska reminds us that history is not only shaped by famous battles or iconic leaders but by the quiet struggles of ordinary people in extraordinary circumstances. It reveals a chapter of World War II where the enemy was not always visible, the terrain was a relentless adversary, and the courage of a few could echo across time in the wind-swept Aleutians. Paris, 1941. The City of Light was cloaked in shadows. Nazi flags hung from street lamps, German soldiers marched beneath the wrought iron balconies. The vibrant cafes and boulevards, once filled with laughter and art, now whispered secrets beneath the cold gaze of occupation. In this city of contradictions lived Camille Moreau, a young woman whose life would become entwined with one of the most daring and dangerous underground movements in history, the French Resistance. Camille had grown up in a modest apartment near Montmartre, surrounded by her family's warmth and the rhythms of a free Paris. But the German invasion shattered everything. Her father was arrested on suspicion of aiding refugees. Her mother fell ill from despair. Alone and desperate, Camille found herself drawn into a network of couriers, saboteurs, and spies who refused to bow to the Nazi regime. The resistance was not a single organization but a patchwork of groups with different ideologies and backgrounds, united only by their hatred of the occupiers and their desire to reclaim France. Camille's group operated in the shadows, smuggling messages hidden in books, sabotaging railway lines used to transport troops and weapons, and gathering intelligence to support the Allied forces preparing for the invasion. Camille's role was that of a courier, a job that required courage, quick thinking, and a flawless memory. She carried coded letters through checkpoints, disguised as an ordinary Parisian. Every day was a risk, every glance from a Gestapo officer a potential death sentence. The weight of secrecy grew heavier with each passing week, but so did her resolve. One of the most haunting elements of Camille's story was a series of letters she wrote but never sent. Hidden beneath floorboards and tucked inside the lining of her coat, these letters were addressed to her family, words of hope, fear, and love that she could not voice openly. They painted a vivid picture of life under occupation, the scarcity of food, the constant threat of betrayal, the rare moments of joy amid despair. The letters also reveal the complexity of human nature during wartime. Camille encountered both heroes and traitors, neighbors who risked their lives to protect Jewish families, and collaborators who profited from the Nazi regime. She witnessed brutal reprisals after acts of sabotage, including the arrest and execution of friends. Yet, she never wavered in her belief that freedom was worth any price. The resistance's impact was felt across France and beyond. In 1944, as Allied forces prepared for the D-Day invasion, groups like Camille's stepped up sabotage efforts to disrupt German supply lines and communication. The chaos they created helped to weaken German defenses, paving the way for the liberation of Paris. In August 1944, as the French capital erupted in uprising, Camille found herself on the front lines of a battle for her city's soul. The streets filled with barricades, gunfire, and the cheers of a people reclaiming their freedom. Her letters, once hidden, were now a testament to survival and resistance. After the war, Camille faced the challenge of rebuilding her life. The scars of occupation lingered, and the loss of family weighed heavily. She worked to preserve the memory of those dark years, helping to document the stories of ordinary citizens who had dared to fight back. Her lost letters were eventually discovered and published, offering historians and readers a rare, intimate glimpse into the spirit of resistance. Shadows over Paris is a story of courage beneath tyranny, of quiet defiance in the face of overwhelming power. It reveals how a single young woman's bravery, carried through secret letters and dangerous missions, contributed to a movement that helped turn the tide of World War II. It reminds us that even in the darkest times, hope can be found in whispers and shadows, and that the fight for freedom is never truly over. In the biting winter of 1941, as the world was engulfed in chaos, the city of Leningrad stood defiant against the might of the Nazi war machine. The siege of Leningrad, one of the longest and deadliest sieges in history, lasted 872 days, bringing starvation, relentless bombardment, and despair to millions. Amid this crucible of endurance was Dmitry Ivanov, a young Soviet tank commander whose courage and determination would help shape the fate of the city and, ultimately, the war itself. Dmitry was born in a small village outside Leningrad. From a young age, he had been fascinated by machines and engineering, skills that would later serve him well on the battlefields. When the German army launched Operation Barbarossa in June 1941, Dmitry was called to the front lines, quickly rising through the ranks due to his leadership and technical expertise. As the German forces encircled Leningrad, cutting off all supply routes, Dmitry's unit was tasked with defending the outskirts, key points along the frozen Lake Ladoga and the approaches from the south. The city's defenders faced a relentless enemy equipped with superior firepower and air support, but they had something the Germans underestimated: an iron will to survive. The conditions were beyond brutal. Food was rationed to mere scraps, winters brought temperatures plunging below -40°C, and bombs shattered homes and hearts alike. Civilians and soldiers alike suffered from hunger, disease, and exhaustion. Yet, Dmitry and his comrades refused to yield. Using their T-34 tanks, famed for their resilience and maneuverability, they launched daring counterattacks against the advancing Wehrmacht. Dmitry's leadership became legendary. He devised innovative tactics, using the frozen terrain to outflank enemy positions, coordinating with infantry and artillery despite fractured communications, and exploiting the enemy's overconfidence. His unit became a symbol of resistance, inspiring those around him even as the city's population dwindled. The documentary reveals the human side of the siege through Dmitry's wartime diary entries and letters home. He writes of camaraderie forged in fire, the loss of close friends, and the desperate hope that someday the city would be free again. He also documents the impact of Stalin's orders, sometimes brutal, often ruthless, demanding that no ground be lost, regardless of the cost. In 1943, the Soviet forces opened the Road of Life across frozen Lake Ladoga, a lifeline for the starving city. Dmitry participated in escorting supply convoys, braving constant Luftwaffe attacks. The documentary captures these perilous journeys, showing how every crate of food and ammunition was a victory over death. The turning point came in early 1944, when Soviet troops launched a massive offensive to break the siege. Dmitry's tank battalion spearheaded assaults that pushed back the German lines, reclaiming lost territory and opening corridors for relief. The fall of the siege marked not only a strategic victory but a profound psychological triumph for the Soviet Union. Iron Shadows does not shy away from the harsh realities of war, the sacrifices, the moral ambiguities, and the toll on civilians. Yet it also honors the indomitable spirit of those who endured. Dmitry's story serves as a testament to the resilience of Leningrad's defenders and the city itself, which rose from ruins to become a symbol of Soviet strength. The siege left scars that lasted long after the guns fell silent, but Dmitry lived to see the victory and to witness the rebuilding of his beloved city. His memoirs, later published, offered a rare first-person perspective on one of the greatest ordeals of the Second World War, reminding future generations of the cost of freedom and the shadows cast by war. The summer of 1940 was a defining moment for Britain, as the nation stood alone against the relentless might of Nazi Germany. The Battle of Britain was not only fought in daylight skies but under the cloak of darkness, where the Royal Air Force's night fighter pilots took to the skies to defend their homeland. Among them was Flight Lieutenant James Hawthorne, a fictional pilot whose courage and skill helped turn the tide in Britain's darkest hour. James was a product of a generation raised amid whispers of war and tales of valor from the Great War. When the Luftwaffe began its bombing campaign known as the Blitz, targeting cities and civilians, James volunteered for the Night Fighter Squadron, a dangerous and poorly understood branch of the RAF. Flying the formidable Bristol Beaufighter, equipped with early radar technology, his mission was to intercept German bombers under the cover of night. The technology was new and rudimentary. Radar operators on the ground guided pilots like James to their targets, but once in the air, they had to rely on instruments, training, and instinct. Flying in darkness, often through thick clouds or smoke from burning cities, The pilots hunted the enemy using beams of searchlights, the glowing tracers of anti-aircraft fire, and the eerie silence between bursts of gunfire. James's story is one of constant tension and split-second decisions. The documentary follows him through harrowing missions over London and the industrial Midlands, where every engagement meant a fight for survival. His squadron faced the deadly Messerschmitt Bf 110s, German bombers, and the ever-present risk of mechanical failure or disorientation in the night sky. Beyond the aerial battles, the documentary explores the camaraderie among pilots and ground crews, the long hours of preparation, and the toll of fatigue and fear. Letters James wrote to his family reveal a man wrestling with the responsibility of defending his country while mourning friends lost in combat. Central to James's success was the innovation of radar technology. The chain-home radar network, the first of its kind, gave Britain precious minutes of warning. This early warning system, combined with the skill of pilots like James, blunted the Luftwaffe's attacks and preserved the morale of a nation under siege. The narrative also captures the leadership of Winston Churchill, whose defiant speeches and unyielding spirit galvanized both the military and the British public. "Never in the field of human conflict was so much owed by so many to so few," Churchill famously said, a tribute to pilots like James who fought through the night to keep Britain free. As the Blitz waned in 1941, James's squadron was redeployed to train new pilots and prepare for offensive operations. The experience gained during those grim nights would inform later campaigns, from the bombing of German cities to the air battles over Normandy. Silent Wings concludes with reflections on the legacy of the night fighters, a group whose bravery was often overshadowed by the daylight heroes of the Battle of Britain, but whose contribution was no less vital. James Hawthorne's story embodies the courage, innovation, and sacrifice that helped Britain survive and ultimately triumph in the Second World War. Through the dark skies, Silent Wings carried hope, proving that even in the deepest night, light and resilience endure. The echoes of these hidden battles still haunt the ruins of forgotten fields and whispered letters. Behind every victory lies a cost unseen, a secret sacrifice shrouded in silence. Some doors, once opened, can never be closed again. Remember this: the shadows we unearth reveal not just